Well, welcome everyone here today. Happy Independence Day to you this morning. We're celebrating our freedom, and I really liked the emphasis on freedom in the songs today. And I noticed that it's connected many times to Jesus. And there's a direct correlation between freedom and Jesus in the Christian's life, and really appreciate that. I find it interesting. My sermon today will focus on a lot of the words of Jesus. I would call it a red letter sermon, where we'll take a lot of the content from the actual words of Jesus. And so an appropriate time to look at freedom. Now, what I'm about to talk about is not necessarily directly connected to freedom, but the title of my sermon today is Beware the Warnings of Jesus. So if you'll think with me for a little bit, think about a warning sign. Now, I don't suppose back in 1776 they had a whole lot of warning signs back then. They were just pretty much going off the cuff and grab your rifle and go. But today we see all kinds of warning signs around us. Have you ever thought about it? We're almost callous to it. We see a warning sign and we're like, well, it's, whatever. I know what I'm doing, right? But I took a little field trip around our house, and I started looking at the warning signs of the around our house, maybe out in our driveway. And here's what I found. So I went to my shed, and I thought, well, a lawnmower surely would have warning signs on it. So I went, and I was right. It's got warning signs of danger, caution, warning. I mean, everything you could think of associated with something bad will be on that lawnmower. I mean, it tells you not to have any riders. It tells you, don't mow with people present. I would call that a serious warning. If you've ever known anybody to get in an accident from a mower, it's not usually pretty. But I'm going to go down through some warning signs here. And I would like you to think to yourself, you don't have to answer out loud, but think to yourself, is this warning sign serious or is it frivolous? Is it something that really isn't that necessary? So how about when you get into your car, if you look at the airbag warning up on your visor, it's going to say death or serious injury can occur. And you think to yourself, well, isn't the airbag supposed to save my life? But yet death or injury can occur? You have to, how about a gasoline can? That seems like a no-brainer, right? Extremely flammable vapors can explode, but it also says harmful or fatal if swallowed. I don't know how many of you have swallowed gas, maybe when you try to siphon something out in the old days. Gas does not taste good, and I would not recommend swallowing it. How about a bicycle? Always wear a helmet. Make sure the pedals are tight, check your brakes, and do not ride at night. So just a little note here, if you're riding at night, just make sure you do check your brakes, because it's going to come in really handy. How about a toaster? Went into our cupboard, and we keep a little toaster there. It says, caution, do not immerse in any liquid. How many here have ever put your toaster into the sink to wash it, or, don't do that. How about a folding chair? There's a folding chair sitting right there, and I said, well, I wonder if the folding chair has anything on it. And it says, care should be exercised near an open flame or with burning cigarettes. So don't smoke while you're on the folding chair. Go to your fridge. There was a can of whipped topping in a can. It says, contents under pressure. Do not puncture. Keep out of reach of children except under adult supervision. So remember that, kids. Ask your parents before you get the whipped topping. How about Tums? You would think something so calming as a Tum for your tummy would not have a warning label on it, but it does. It says you'll find that antacids may interact with certain prescription drugs, and sure enough, it can. Sometimes if you're taking medicine, it can actually neutralize that medicine. One more, a bottle of Head & Shoulders shampoo. It says on the little warning tag, it says, let's see here, for external use only. So don't try to drink the Head and Shoulder shampoo or any other shampoo. You know, all of these, all of these things here, these warnings have a common element of seriousness to it. Some of them seem frivolous, not so important. But a warning sign is there for a reason. It's to keep us safe. It's to help us, just be able to live life in a more safe fashion. So, what are the warning signs in Scripture? I would like to take a look at Luke chapter 12 today, and we'd like to take a look at that passage. I would say about 95% of what is written are the words of Jesus. And so you're going to find words like be on your guard, watch out, beware, be careful. So if you're ever reading through Scripture and it says that, take a note. It's something important is about to follow. So, the 4 points that I'd like us to look at today is the first one is going to be beware of the leaven or the yeast of the Pharisees. And we're going to try to figure out what that leaven or that yeast is. Beware of greed, beware of worry, and be watchful. That one takes just a little bit different turn, but it encourages us to be watchful. So let's go to Luke chapter 11. We're going to proceed to Luke chapter 12 here just to get a basis for what we're talking about. But Luke chapter 11, 37 to 46. This is a opportunity for us to get to know the Pharisees a little bit. So verse 37 of chapter 11. When Jesus had finished speaking, a Pharisee invited him to eat with him, so he went in and reclined at the table. But the Pharisee was surprised when he noticed that Jesus did not first wash before the meal. Then the Lord said to him, "Now then, you Pharisees clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside you are full of greed and wickedness. You foolish people, did not the one who made the outside make the inside also? But now as for what is inside you, be generous to the poor, and everything will be clean for you. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone. Woe to you, Pharisees, because you love the most important seats in the synagogues and respectful greetings in the marketplaces. Woe to you, because you are like unmarked grave, which people walk over without knowing it." One of the experts in the law answered him, "Teacher, when you say these things, you insult us so." Oh boy, insult us, huh? Jesus replied, "And you experts in the law, woe to you, because you load people down with burdens they can hardly carry, and you yourselves will not lift one finger to help them." Then we're going to skip to chapter 12, verse 1, and we'll read the first 3 verses there. "Meanwhile, when a crowd of many thousands had gathered, so that they were trampling on one another, Jesus began to speak first to his disciples, saying," and this is our first warning sign, "Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear of the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the rooftops, or from the roofs." So who were the Pharisees? They were rules people. I don't know how many people like rules here. I'm sure we have some people here that are very much rules people. It's just the way that I think God created some of our minds. Like we like the rules. We want to know the parameters of what's right, what's wrong, and we like rules. But there's some people that don't like rules. So there were rules people, and if you go back and look at some of this text back here, you have I brought some water up here this morning. It talks about being clean on the inside versus clean on the outside. Jesus said that what they were doing was essentially drinking from a dirty cup on the inside. They were tithers. tithers to the tilt. Like they really took their tithing seriously, as we should today. But they really, it says a tenth of your mint, rue, and all the other kinds of garden herbs. So imagine you had outside of your doorstep some mint growing. Let's say that there was 10 stalks of mint tea growing. Their rules required that one of those stalks needed to be picked and taken and given as a tithe. So everything was to the letter. The Pharisees felt important when they walked in. If you walked into, let's say, a wedding or a banquet, and the usher might be there telling you where to sit. The Pharisees would walk in. They didn't need the usher. They already knew where they were going to sit. They were going to sit right up front at the best table. So that's the type of people that the Pharisees are. But we don't want to condemn them because we can see our own flaws in that kind of way. We're not setting out today to just condemn the Pharisees, but what we want to do is see what went wrong. So what is the yeast that it's talking about? To be on our guard against the yeast of the Pharisees. What is yeast? So I thought about bringing a loaf of bread here today and some yeast and flour to demonstrate, but yeast is something that thoroughly pervades a thing by its influence. And I looked that word up in the Greek, and that's what it insinuates, that in other words, yeast is something very, very small in relation to what your batch of bread is going to be. So you might, how many ladies bake bread here today? Or men or women? Does anybody bake bread? A few people. You could probably tell me exactly how much yeast is required for a batch of bread. From what I've seen, I got Leona's cookbooks out, and I looked up a few recipes because I didn't want to be inaccurate in what I'm saying here today. But it takes about 2 to 3 tablespoons of yeast per 6 to 8 cups of flour. Now, if you were to, put that into size, it's just really tiny amount of yeast into a lot of flour. So a little bit of yeast goes a long way because it starts to spread. And I wish I could tell you all the science of it, but I don't know the science of all that. But just like yeast, a little bit of hypocrisy goes a long way. And I'm not talking about a good way. So what can we learn from the Pharisees? We know that they were hypocritical. They liked the flash and the pizzazz that went with their position. But they seem to say one thing, but then do another. So their actions didn't match up to their words very well. So what can we learn from them? I would say it's twofold. Be careful who you listen to. So there are Pharisee-like people around in our day today. The Pharisees' teachings, I think they'll creep up on you. It sounds good, has elements of truth, but it's laced with lies and deception. So Dr. Ben Carson made this observation about children. Dr. Ben Carson says this: kids have what I would call a built-in hypocrisy antenna that comes up and blocks out what you're saying when you're being a hypocrite. Have you ever thought about children that way? They just have that antenna that just like, they're not doing what they're saying. So look for the actions in those that teach the word to see if their actions match up with their words. I stand up here today, and that's what you need to be doing as I speak. Do my actions match up with what I'm saying here today? So on a personal level, what other things can we learn from the Pharisees? I think one of them is to learn that we need to be careful to live life with authenticity. Authenticity is just being real. Hypocrisy is actually based upon pretending. The Greek word would refer to it as the acting of a stage player. So you've seen actors and actresses, your favorite show or series about a medical drama or some kind. Good luck if you think the doctor on that show will help you with your heart or work through cancer, because He's just an actor. Um, so what's the opposite, or what counteracts the hypocrisy? In John 14, Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me." It's truth. Authenticity is based upon truth. Someone, Adam Grant once said, authenticity means erasing the gap between what you firmly believe inside and what you reveal to the outside world. So beware of hypocrisy. So now let's take a look at point number 2. Beware of greed. Let's read from Luke 12:13 to 21. So this includes the parable of the rich fool. So starting at verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, this is our second warning sign, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." And then it goes on in 16. He says, and he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." And that seems like a good problem to have, right? Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns, bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God." So I don't know how many people here know what that feeling of greed is like. I'm going to stand up here and say I do. I know what greed is like. I've been there, and it's a daily struggle to be thinking about yourself first. Now, I could imagine maybe there's some people here that don't struggle with greed, but so much. And, I could start naming names, but I think we all have those people in mind, the people that are kind and generous and giving. You know that they give of themselves all the time. But what is greed? So what I'm about to say here may be a little hard for us Americans to believe, but in Africa, monkeys are considered a delicacy. Now, I know you say that's gross, and it is. But the problem is monkeys are very fast and too smart to get a trap, or to get in a trap. But there's a unique way to catch them. The locals will take out a gourd, and they'll tie it to a stake, and then they'll take this gourd, cut a hole in it, and put some nuts inside. So the monkeys then come to get the nuts. They obviously want to eat. It looks good. They put their hand, so if you imagine this gourd, they'll put their hand into the gourd to get the nuts. Then they grip those nuts, and they try to pull their little hand out. And it doesn't come out. But the little monkey is too stubborn. He's too greedy to think about releasing his hand and getting it back out and figuring out another way to get the nuts out. So the natural greed of the monkey causes them to refuse to let go of the nut, and men can walk up to them and, well, you could say the rest is history. So as we come up, this weekend is 4th of July weekend, I would say from one American to another, don't let your possessions and greed take control of you. It's easy to do. We've come through some really good times here in America. And, if you want it, kind of the slogan is, if you want it, you can probably find a way to get it, right? But more importantly, from one believer to another, don't let greed creep into your life. It's easy for it to creep in. It's a warning sign. In Luke 6:38, Jesus actually tells us to do the opposite of what greed is. He gives us the giving principle, what I call the giving principle. It says, "Give, and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So beware of greed. Number 3, beware of worry. Now, I think I've said it here before, but I feel like I'm an expert on worrying here this morning. It's something that I deal with probably on a regular basis. I think some people worry more than others. But so I would like to take a look at Luke 12, 22 to 31. And let's start reading at 22. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life." That's our warning sign right there. Now, you can say, well, it doesn't say beware or be on your guard. I don't know why it doesn't say that there, but I would take this as a warning. I would kind of imagine Jesus to look at somebody that worries, and rather than just bark it out at them, I could just imagine his still small voice, his comforting, soft voice saying, son, daughter, don't worry. It's okay. It's like you would calm your child. Your child is concerned about something, and it's all right. So just imagine Jesus speaking this way. So therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Anyone here? Anybody add a single hour to your life by worrying? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the flowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be added. These things will be given to you as well. So I find it interesting in this little part of the passage, and this is just mainly a side note. I find it interesting that Jesus now connects the worrying with nature. I don't know about you, but I went through a time in my life where it was a really tough time. There was almost nothing better for me than to go up to our little spot by the river and just sit by the river. There's something about nature that is calming. And so if you find yourself worrying, take a walk. Go find a river to sit by. Go outside. Take a look at the flowers. Take a look at the birds. Some people enjoy bird watching, but I find that so interesting. And the worrying part can also have side effects of its own. And I came across this. It says this is Dr. Una D. McCann, and she has a big, long title, Associate Program Director and Professor of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Johns Hopkins. So she should know what she's talking about. She says, it's my view and my personal clinical experience that anxiety disorders can play a major role in heart disease. I believe that a really careful look at anxiety would reveal the ways it can severely impact heart disease, both as a contributing factor and as an obstacle in recovery. Another statistic I came by, I have not verified this, but this is a great percentage of our illnesses in some way are related to worry and anxiety and stress. In fact, it's the number one killer in America is heart disease. Kind of verifies what she's saying there. 38% of all deaths are heart-related, and many of those are related to hypertension, high blood pressure, and anxiety. Worry has been linked to cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis, gastrointestinal illness, and suicide. 3/4 of all visits to primary care physicians are stress-related complaints or disorders. So even if it's not a full 3/4, let's just say half. That's a lot of stress and a lot of worry. So I'm kind of reminded of a song that used to be popular back in the late 80s. Do you remember the song? Anybody want to take a guess at what it was? Um, don't worry, be happy. You can say it. So it actually reached #1 on the charts. A guy named Bobby McFerrin wrote it. I actually looked up some of the lyrics to it because I was just curious. I just know what I just now said. But it says, in every life we have some trouble, but when you worry, you make it double. Boy, isn't that the truth? So don't worry and beware of worry. Our fourth point today and last point is not so much a beware, but it is a beware. It's be watchful. So in Luke 12:35-40, I would like to just have us read that right now. So it's the little subtitle there is watchfulness. Be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes back and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will dress himself to serve, will have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. But understand this: if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would have not let his house be broken into. And here's our warning sign. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. That is the most important warning sign that we have. These others, very, very important in the life of a believer and for everyone. But we need to beware and to keep in mind that Jesus is coming back. And he's coming back soon. We don't know when that soon is. We've been hearing soon for years. And that reminds me of a song, and you probably, some of the, let's say the older generation, I'm almost to that point. So I think later this month I will have reached that little threshold. But anyway, so this song is titled, Jesus is Coming Soon. And I'm going to read the first stanza and then the chorus. Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. Freedom we all hold dear now is at stake. Now, how true is that? Like, really, our freedom that we celebrate today, we know our freedoms are at stake. Humbling your hearts to God saves from the chastening rod. Seek the way pilgrims trod, Christians awake. Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet their doom. Trumpets will sound. All of the dead shall rise. Righteous meet in the skies, going where no one dies, heavenward bound. Today Jesus gave us warning signs for a reason. There's always an element of seriousness in every warning sign. And especially when Jesus tells us to beware, to be, to pay attention. So let's pay attention to those warning signs. In conclusion, let's just remind ourselves of the hypocrisy, of the greed, the worry. Those things are things that if we know and are conscious of our lives around us, we can read Scripture and we know that these things do not further the cause of Christ. But be watchful, and be watchful for Christ's return. Let's pray.